If you use a Canon R5 for shooting video, you have probably heard by now about Canon's new R5C camera, a video-centric version of the R5. And like me, you may be considering upgrading to this new model. After carefully collecting info on the camera by watching the Canon launch event as well as an expert panel discussions at B&H, Adorama, an interview with Canon European representative by CineD channel, and a couple of actual but cursory reviews by Canon retailers, I feel more perplexed and concerned about the new R5 than excited about it. In this video, I discuss why I'm concerned about what I've found about the image specs for the new R5C camera as compared to the existing R5 model. Hello and welcome to Telview. After watching Canon representatives avoid answering direct questions about the dynamic range and best quality recording modes in the new R5C camera, I decided to do my own research to get some clarity of these topics by digging into published camera specifications. First, regarding the dynamic range of the new R5C, it will not have the C-Log2 profile, and as a result, will have only 14 f-stops in dynamic range. It was disappointing to hear from Canon experts in the expert discussions at B&H and Adorama that one could apply the C-Log2 profile to R5 or R5C RAW footage recorded in the C-Log3 profile, implying that this is equivalent to having C-Log3 encoding capability in the camera. This is a common misconception in social media discussions as well. The camera has to encode data into the C-Log profile to be able to capture the additional 1 to 1.5 f-stops in dynamic range. Applying C-Log2 processing to C-Log3 recorded footage in post-processing, which is possible, for example, in DaVinci Resolve RAW module, does not extend the dynamic range of the camera, but just reveals greater noise and poor image quality in the shadows. It is very disappointing that Canon experts confuse their audience rather than explaining why C-Log2 is not available in the new R5C Cine camera. If this is a camera differentiation strategy, just tell us that. If this is technically impossible, please explain why. If it is a matter of target pricing, I would be willing to pay for a downloadable C-Log2 firmware upgrade. By the way, the European Canon representative interviewed by CineD channel rightly contradicted his US colleagues and correctly explained that using C-Log2 profile to process C-Log3 footage on the new Canon R5C camera does not yield any improvement in image quality. See links to the B&H and Adorama expert panel discussions and to the CineD interview in the description. Okay, let's get to the topic of raw video image quality specifications of the new Canon R5 camera and how they compare to the R5 camera. The new Canon R5 holds the promise of not overheating in any mode and has multiple options for shooting in RAW at 3 compression levels, 3 frame rates, and 3 sensor crop settings. But do we lose anything in the process? In this video, I will be discussing raw video image capture formats and modes only. To better compare maximum available quality of raw recording of Canon R5 and R5C, I prepared this table using specifications for both cameras published on Canon's website. To simplify the table, I used only the highest quality compression options for 30p and 60p frame rates and for full Super 35 cropped and Super 16 cropped sensor modes. Since the camera bit rates are given in specifications for different frame rates, sensor resolutions, and sensor crops, I normalized the bit rate per pixel, taking into account the frame rate and resolutions of each mode. Have a look at the last column on the right. It represents a bit rate per pixel in each frame regardless of the frame rate and sensor crop. The first thing that surprised me was that Canon R5 has a 31% higher recording bitrate per pixel in its 8K Canon RAW 30p recording format. Getting the data aligned so I'm comparing apples to apples took some digging. Canon changed the nomenclature of their raw compression options and bitrates for the R5C versus what we have in R5. The Canon RAW compression option present in the R5 for 8K at 30 frames per second with 26 megabits bitrate is not available for recording 8K 30p video in the full-frame mode on the new R5C camera. The highest bitrate for 8K RAW 30p recording on R5C is RAW Lite RS option with a bitrate of 1980 megabits per second. So the R5 has 31% higher bitrate for the most useful frame rate of 30p when shooting 8K RAW full frame. Interestingly, the new Canon R5 shoots 60 frames per second in full frame 8K RAW using RAW Lite ST compression at 2570 megabits without overheating. So why this bitrate is not available for 8K RAW at 30 frames per second? In fact, the bitrate is just 50 megabits per second shy of the bitrate used to record 8K RAW at 30 frames per second on the Canon R5. Since the new R5C has the same sensor and the same Digicax processor as the R5, the R5C should be capable of recording RAW footage as the R5 does. Again, according to specs, R5C can handle the 2570 megabits per second bitrate without overheating in 8K RAW at 60 frames per second. What's going on here? Is Canon reserving a high bitrate for a more professional 8K camera equipped with the same sensor that will have a RAW HQ codec for the 8K 30p at 2600 megabits per second? What is also interesting, new and different from R5, is that R5C can record a direct pixel-to-pixel readout in 5.9K Super 35 and 2.9K Super 16 cropped sensor modes at up to 60 frames per second. In fact, at 60 frames per second, the camera has its highest bitrate per pixel ratio of 3.78 and 3.86 for the Super 35 and Super 16 cropped sensor modes respectively. This is very interesting because a vast majority of cine lenses in the wild have Super 35 or Super 16 image circle. Using high-end cine lenses in cropped sensor mode with high bitrate may enable the new Canon R5C to produce the highest image quality, especially when shooting in RAW at 60p. The 60 frame per second frame rate and high bitrate per frame are very useful for recording fast-moving subject matter like sporting events. The Super 35 and Super 16 sensors also render higher depths of field at wider apertures, which is often desirable when shooting sports. I am particularly interested in RAW recording options on Canon R5C. Based on my experience and experience of others working with the Canon R5, we know that image from a direct pixel-to-pixel readout is always sharper than the images oversampled in camera from a larger resolution sensor. In addition, the image from a full sensor readout is much sharper than the 4K and 2K images generated by line binning or line skipping on R5. Fortunately, all RAW recording options on the new Canon R5C will be pixel-to-pixel readouts from 8K, 5.9K, and 2.9K sensor windows. The 4K and 2K XF-AVC and MP4 encoding, however, will use oversampled data from the full-frame 8K sensor. Oversampling from a full-frame sensor has two benefits. First, it reserves the full-frame angle of view, and second, it reduces the file size and allows use of SD cards as the recording media. Sadly, even though oversampled recording is much better than a line binning recording method from a larger sensor, the sharpness of images recorded using the new On the 5RC XF AVC codec will likely be lower than the pixel-to-pixel readout of RAW images. I would have loved to use the XF AVC codec on the new Canon R5C in some of my projects, but I'm skeptical about the image quality versus RAW. At this point, it's unclear what codec and sampling mode will be used for the 120p recording in the slow and fast mode of the camera. The 120p MP4 footage from the R5 is almost impossible to match in post to 8K RAW recordings. It looks like the soonest the R5C will ship is early April this year. I hope, however, that Canon introduce in the coming weeks a true full-frame 8K RF mount cinema camera in the C300-500 form factor. Well, I hope you found this video interesting. Let me know what have been your experience working with video products from Canon and your hopes for next camera. I would love to see you subscribed and to read your comments and likes for this video. Until next time, cheers.